Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting. This meeting is of South and West Plans Panel. My name is Councillor Eileen Taylor, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Could I remind everyone that we are holding this meeting in a way that is COVID secure and in accordance with new social distance guidelines, which means everyone's presence is an appropriate spread out and has been allocated to a specific seat. Today's meeting is being live streamed on the City Council YouTube channel so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. South and West Plan Panels deals with applications from the south, northwest, and north of the city. The aim of the panel is to hear all the relevant information from applicants, members of the public, and council officers to help members of the panel make their decisions. Before I begin, could I remind members that the 90 minutes rule has been removed, but it would be good practice that if the room gets to a temperature that being taken, the staff and visitors uncomfortable, then a well break may be needed to ventilate the room. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves, and please mute your mic after doing so. So before we start, could we begin from the left? So we'll start this way around.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Carr, Head of Development Management and Lead Officer for today's panel.
Stephen Wilkinson, Principal Planner, Development Management at Leeds City Council, and I'll be presenting the item today.
Afternoon, I'm Kate Newell. I'm the Conservation Officer for this area, giving conservation advice.
Councillor Sharon Hamilton, Meanwood and Moortown.
Good afternoon, Councillor Denise Reagan from Burnmouth Toft and Richmond Hill Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paul Ray from Hunslet and Riverside Ward.
Good afternoon, Sharon Burke from Middleton Park Ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor David Jenkins from Killingbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Colin Campbell. Just wondering what I've done wrong to be dismissed to the bottom end of the table, Chair, but I'll try and be good this meeting.
Good afternoon, Trish Smith. I represent the Pudgey Ward.
Dawn Collins, Councillor for Holsworth Ward.
Councillor Barry Anderson, Adeline Wharfdale Ward.
Good afternoon, Ahmed Hunaidi, Leeds City Council Highways.
Andy Booth, and I'll be the clerk to the panel this afternoon.
Nikki Diol, Legal Officer to the panel today.
Thank you. Can I also welcome other officers that sit across the right, and also welcome visitors and speakers to the meeting. I'll now move on to the agenda item 1, Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item number 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under agenda item number 2, there are no items which require the exclusion of the press or public. Under item number 3, there are no late items on the agenda today. Under agenda item number 4, could we ask if any members have any interest to declare? No. And under agenda item number 5, we've received apologies for absence on behalf of Councillor Finnegan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 6. That's minutes of the previous meeting held on July the 1st. There are 3 meetings. Do members accept, before I say that, you've all have your agenda, take it that you've read the minutes, and I won't go page by page, but when I come to matters arising, I won't eliminate if you just put your hands up. So could I ask members to, if you agree with the minutes, can someone, not?
Chair, I just wanted to expand on one of the bullet points on page 7, please.
Yeah.
It's a minor issue, but I just wondered, the second bullet point down on page 7, it just feels like it's hanging there. The other bullet points have like a resolution of what was actually discussed. So I just wondered if officers could make a statement after the words have been removed to say that the issue will be discussed further with the applicant. It just doesn't read well at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, I think we'd be happy to do that.
It's just look, if you look at the other bullet points, they give some idea of what was discussed and what the outcome was. That's all, just to be consistent.
Okay, officers will have a look at that. Would you clarify? Okay, thank you. Is anyone else disagree with the minutes? Can the minute go forward?
I'll propose, Chair.
Thank you. Is someone just- Okay. Are there any matters arising? As I mentioned earlier, I won't do page by page. If there's any matters, if you just highlight the numbers. No? Thank you. We'll now move on to item 7, application for the demolition of the extinguished outbuilding. Could I invite Steve Wilkinson? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application relates to the demolition of an existing outbuilding and the erection of a single-storey rear extension at 3 Glebe Terrace in Headingley. Before I start, there's just a couple of updates. Firstly, in terms of the officer report, if you look at paragraph 12, the last bullet point there is incomplete. And we just wanted to add that the further details that were requested there were in relation to the parapet detailing and the skylight details, which have now been received and are on the plans under consideration. The other update related to a late representation, which has been received from a neighbour, which highlighted issues in relation to land levels. Some plans and other information were submitted. However, these haven't been circulated given the late nature of the submission and potential copyright issues involved in that information. So moving on, the application relates to demolition of existing outbuilding and the erection of a single-storey rear extension, and the site is etched in red there. And Glebe Terrace is located within the Far Headingley Conservation Area, where it is identified as a positive building. So that's the whole terrace. And number 3 is a mid-terrace property. And as you can see there, the numbering is consecutive. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, as opposed to the usual odds and evens. So it's identified as a positive building within the conservation area appraisal. And Glebe Terrace itself is accessed off Hollin Lane to the north, with the rear elevation of the terrace facing westwards towards a car park, and beyond that Wheatwood Lane. And there's also a back alleyway called Back Glebe Terrace, which is directly to the rear of the terrace. So this is the front of a terrace, which is a very attractive terrace then. And number 3 is the property with a yellow door. And just for clarity, no changes are proposed to this elevation. However, it's an attractive frontage, and this is where a lot of the special interest in the conservation area exists. So it's constructed of stone to the front with nice bay windows, ornate detailing, and the landscape front gardens, which are very attractive and contribute positively to the conservation area. And you might also note there that the terrace steps down from left to right, so there is a modest land level change, which looking at the ridge levels there is about the equivalent of 1 course of the stonework there. So this is an elevated image looking at the rear elevation of the terrace where the proposal is going to go. And if you note here, the materials change. So the rear elevation of the terrace is in brick with some render elements as well. Each property has a 2-storey like outrigger element, which is part of the original property and consistent along the lines. Then the properties also have variations of single-storey additions beyond this. They also benefit from reasonably sized rear gardens and vegetation to the rear as well. So it's going on to the next one. So this is the property in question. So it's got an existing single story, which is a rear outbuilding, which has been rendered to the back. And then this isn't in your packs. This is just an additional picture that I put in just to highlight the land level difference. So there is a very modest land level difference between the host property on the right and the neighbouring property at number 2 on the left hand side, which might not be discernible from this picture. So this is looking down the line of properties, and as you can see here, there's a range of styles of the single story rear addition. So there's differences in the roof pitches, there's differences in the V-look styles, roof styles, projections of the rear extensions as well. And if you look all the way down the bottom, that one at the ends projects quite a considerable distance. But as I say there's not a uniformity in this style of extension to the rear. This is the picture from Weekwood Lane looking towards the rear of the terrace. So as you can see from that, there's a wall and some substantial trees which provide a considerable amount of screening across the car park at the moment. Of course, these trees are deciduous, so that screening will have a lesser effect in winter. However, it's still not duly prominent. This is just a closer image highlighting above that. Even from shorter range views, there's quite a lot of screening there. This is looking up the alleyway, so from north to south, and this is the back alleyway. And you can see there that given the boundary walls and the neighbouring outbuilding, that you still can't get a good view of the rear elevation of number 3. And this is further down, looking up as well. So the existing boundary treatment and land levels help screen the development from wider views. So the rear elevation of a terrace doesn't have the same presence or make the same contribution to the conservation area. This is the proposal. So the left hand side is the existing site plan showing that 2-story outrigger extension and the single story outbuilding outline. And on the right hand side is the footprint of the new extension. So the new extension doesn't extend any further than the existing outbuilding. However, it does infill that gap and extend the full width of the property. And this is the floor plan here. So on the left hand side is the existing layout showing that outbuilding and the depth of the extension. And the proposed ground floor layout in the middle shows the infilling extent there. And the right hand one is the roof, which you'll note is a flat roof design, which I'll come on to in a minute. So these are the elevational drawings. Top left there's as existing, so you've got the render outbuilding and the brick rear elevation, and the proposed extension is a flat roofed contemporary style single story rear extension, which has got an L-shaped form filling in that infill element. As I previously said, it doesn't project further than the existing outbuilding, albeit it now extends the full width of the terrace property, and it's proposed to be built of brick to match the existing rear elevation. And the extension benefits from a parapet detailing which screens the proposed skylights and flat roof element, making sure that's not elements visible, sorry. So that detailing's down in the bottom left there, that cross section showing the parapet, the flat roof and the skylight there. So in terms of our considerations of the application, just to clarify, we received 31 letters of representation, and they were from 13 different households. So quite a few people wrote in more than once, but we have had revised plans over the course of the application. And the points raised within the letters are covered in paragraph 13 of the officer report. So in terms of the officer's consideration of the impacts of the application, firstly, as I previously highlighted, the extension is located within a conservation area, and the statutory test requires us to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character and appearance of a conservation area. We've also had regard to the MPPF requirements relating to development in conservation areas. And officers agree that, whilst the proposal is flat roofed in nature, it's subordinate and does not unduly dominate the rear elevation of the property or the terrace. The extension will be constructed of brick to match and harmonise with the existing rear elevation, and that will be carefully controlled by a planning condition which will require a sample panel of brickwork, including the mortar, to ensure that a suitable match is achieved. The fenestration pattern, including the coping detail, is considered to sit comfortably within the terrace, and the existing character of the rear elevation of that terrace is partly formed by an array of different single-storey rear additions of different heights, depths, materials, roof pitches, detailing and window design. So there's a lack of uniformity in that regard. And consequently, the proposed extension is not considered to be incongruous, given that character. And as you'll have seen from the photos as well, the rear elevation is also well screened, and it'll have very little impact. It's not a prominent position within the conservation area. And overall, the extension is considered to be sensitive and sympathetic to the original dwelling and local character, and it will preserve the character and appearance of a conservation area, so it meets that statutory test. In terms of the impact on the neighbours, if I go back to the pictures, sorry, this is probably a good one here. So if you look at the site plan on the right hand side there, that shows that the extension will not come out further than the existing extension to number 4. So there's not going to be an impact in that regard. In relation to the property to the north at number 2, you'll note I've previously mentioned that there's a slight land level difference there. So the neighbouring property is on a slightly lower land level. I'll just find the picture for you. This one here. So this is the neighbouring property with the host property to the right. So the proposal will knock down that existing render outbuilding to the right, and that's where the new extension will be going, not projecting any further, albeit that the roof of the extension is flat, so that it'll have a higher presence there. But the extension will be only 2 meters deep, and we usually allow 3 meter deep extensions in relationships in this regard, in relation to the householder design guide. The neighbouring property also benefits from a good sized rear garden, and as you can see there, it's got some fully glazed doors with an additional light well above and the Velux, so we don't consider there'll be an undue impact on that neighbouring room there. So even taking into account the modest land level differences there, we think the impact on the neighbouring property aligns with our guidance, and there won't be an unduly detrimental impact on that neighbour's amenity. So overall, for those reasons, we're recommending that this application is approved. Thank you.
We have 2 speakers for and against. So we've got Marjorie Bettel in attendance who wishes to speak against. Could you please come to the table, Marjorie? Good afternoon, Marjorie. You've got 4 minutes in total to present your case. And after your presentation, the members of the committee will ask some questions if they wishes to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I intend to present reasons why further consideration based on additional detailed plans is required. Following the revised plans, 2 critical areas remain to be addressed before a decision is made. Firstly, of major concern and a significant omission is the complete lack of finished levels on the plans. Objectors alluded to this issue. However, it has not been recorded as a material objection in the report. Thus, the finished external scale and impact cannot be accurately determined. The plans state an external height of 3.15 metres, showing a consistent floor level from hallway into the existing kitchen to the new extension. Details of finished floor levels are critical for this site. Properties on the street typically drop 40 centimetres between hallway and the extent of the proposed extension, and a further drop of 30 centimetres to the garden. The terrace also sits on a hill, each property tiered approximately 30 centimetres higher than the next. Lack of scaled measured plans makes it impossible to assess how the design addresses this issue. It is possible the finished extension extends beyond 4 metres in height based on current garden levels. This needs detailing. The lack of scale on the plans means that the completed development could substantially impact residential amenity. In relation to the report, this brings into question the assessment made in points 40 and 42. The external overall height of the extension could be significantly higher than the stated 3.15 metres, leading to undue impact regarding overdominance and overshadowing. The French doors at number 2 are already impacted by the 45-degree rule, causing a level of overshadowing, which is in part mitigated by the existing pitched roof. Secondly, is the impact that this development will have on the unique character and appearance in a conservation area. The revised plans responded to the Conservation Officer's comments. However, the comments fail to give due consideration to the situation of the property within the terrace, designated as positive buildings within the conservation area. The proposals, including a flat roof, full width frontage, neither preserves nor enhances the character or appearance of the area. Although a level of uniformity at the back of the terrace has been lost, there remains significant design consistency. We would specifically highlight the consistent use of pitch slate roofs on all properties, the consistent break in visual line across the back of each property. Contrary to point 34 of the report, the design is unsympathetic and does not sit harmoniously with both the host and adjoining dwellings within the conservation area as a whole. In summary, the plans lack critical detail to accurately assess the scale of the proposal and its detrimental impact on residential amenity and on the special features of the terrace within a conservation area. We request accurate measured drawings to understand the finished scale and impact, that contextual plans be provided for a section through the house showing finished floor and garden level, elevation drawings showing the relationship to adjacent houses, levels against neighbouring properties. Finished levels included as a planning condition on any future approval. Thank you.
Are there any questions? No? Councillor Collins.
Thank you for coming this afternoon. You're concerned about the levels. Would it help at all if you had the measurement from the gutter line down to the new extension? Because that could be a consistent length, couldn't it? Rather than if you're saying the ground floor is a bit up and down, would that help to have the dimension from the gutter to the rooftop of the new extension? Because you could see how that compares to the other buildings.
I think any additional information would be gratefully received.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Thank you, Marjorie. We now have Louise and Helen will be speaking with the applicants. Louise and Helen, could you please come to your table? Is it just you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you've got 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the panel. My name is Louise Thorne. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and Senior Associate at Knights PLC, and I have an excess of 20 years experience as a planning consultant. I'm speaking today on behalf of the applicants who live in the property subject to the application. The applicants in the process of refurbishing the property for use as a family home. It is their intention to retain, preserve and enhance the historic character of the building. They have had properties in the Far Headingley Conservation Area for the last 20 years, and they have renovated 3 Yorkshire stone properties and have excellent experience in this area. They've taken on this property in a state of disrepair and are looking to vastly improve it, including its carbon footprint, through the upgrades that they're looking to make. They have experience of renovating historic buildings elsewhere, including a Grade 2 listed building in Cheltenham, and have a desire to continue that work here in Leeds, where they're from. As has been set out in your office's comprehensive report, the applicants have worked with the case officer and the conservation officer throughout the determination process to make changes to the proposal in line with their expert suggestions. This has resulted in the retention of the brick outshoot, the construction of the extension in facing brick to match the existing house, and a change to the proposed rear doors to give a vertical emphasis that is sympathetic to the original building. The Far Headingley Conservation Area appraisal identifies the frontages on the buildings on Glebe Terrace as the positive aspects due to their uniformity and stone bay windows with decorative lintels, as the officer has pointed out. The appraisal recognises that the rear of the terrace is not uniform, given the conversion of the outbuildings and the various rear extensions undertaken over previous years to provide more spacious living accommodation for all of the properties, and has been seen in today's presentation. The properties have all been extended over time with no sole design. Notwithstanding this, there is an arbitrary rear building line that has been created by all of these rear extensions, and the proposal respects this. The proposed extension will not extend out beyond those rear extensions at the neighbouring properties, and would not actually extend as far as those at numbers 1 and number 9. As your officer's report confirms, the single-storey extension would not therefore have any overbearing impacts on, nor would it result in a loss of light or amenity to any of the neighbouring properties. The extension would retain a usable rear courtyard garden with all boundary screening retained, and this could also be improved and strengthened over time. The site is largely screened from public view, as you've seen in the presentation today. The flat roof, which has been commented on, does not detract from the character of the original house or the terrace, as has been suggested by some neighbours in their objections. Conversely, your conservation officer and your planning officer agree that the parapet feature complements the design of the original dwelling, and it offers a more modern feature rather than an otherwise pastiche addition. It is therefore considered that by virtue of its scale, siting, design and use of synthetic materials, the proposed single-storey extension will be subservient to the original house. It will respect the character and appearance of the house, the quality of the terrace and the wider conservation area. Concerns have been raised by neighbours over the future use of the property as a HMO, which is based without fact. I can confirm that this is not the applicant's intention, and that the proposal is to create a living space for their own use and enjoyment. In any case, the area is covered by an Article 4 direction, and such a change of use will require planning permission in its own right. This will be subject to its own scrutiny and assessment. We hope that you can see that the proposal would not be harmful to the existing house, the terrace, or indeed the wider conservation area, and it would not have any adverse impacts on the amenity of the applicant's neighbours. The proposed single-storey extension is modest and meets with all of the relevant planning policy requirements. I would therefore respectfully ask you to follow your officer's recommendation and the advice of the council's conservation expert and approve the application. I would also add, leading on from the comments that we've just heard, that the applicant would be willing to accept any pre-commencement condition relating to finished floor levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Anderson?
What communication and consultation have you had with the local residents Have you met with them? Have you discussed anything with them? Or because of COVID, it's been proved difficult? I mean, so in other words, how often have you spoken to the residents that have got a concern to try and come up with a way forward? How often have you done that?
So the applicant has tried to speak to the local residents on a number of occasions when the queries have been put to her about what she's doing, whether she's just a property developer who's looking to make some money, or whether she, what this is. And also the question keeps arising about future intentions as a HMO or something like that. The applicant has spoken to a number of the neighbours and it really explained her situation that no, this is a family home for her to live in. She's from Leeds. She wants to stay in Leeds. She has a conservation background. Art history and conservation. This is what she's been doing. She's been doing up properties within Leeds, and this is where she wants to continue to live. I think what's happened over time is these discussions have been, in her view, they've been ignored, and the neighbours have taken their own view on what's going forward, and so those relations have fallen apart to a degree, and there has become a degree of animosity, which is why in part I'm here today representing her.
And that was more than material planning concerns. I mean, what the intentions are is what the intentions are, right? But I'm talking about, we heard from the previous objector about the lack of detailed plans. So, I mean, is that something that your client has tried to address by showing better sketches, more detailed sketches, in order to try and give the residents a better understanding?
Yeah, I mean, the information that's just been provided is as detailed as we think is necessary, and which we think gives that information and makes it very clear what is proposed. I think there's always going to be an interpretation of different views on that, but our view, and my professional view, is that there is sufficient information there to explain to the neighbours what's actually being proposed. And as I say, she has tried to address these issues with them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Campbell.
I know I'm a long way away.
You are, and you're hiding behind.
Can I just ask you a quick question? The rear extension will have a flat roof, and yet everything else on there seems to have a pitched roof. Is there any reason why you went for a flat roof? Or sorry, whether the owner went for a flat roof rather than a pitch?
It's purely a design feature. It fits with what is proposed in terms of providing the accommodation, providing the light that they want to have to provide it because of the nature of the terrace properties and the narrowness of them. It gives them the light that they require. And as we've said, to just recreate what's along there is sort of a pastiche design. And as the conservation officer said, there's nothing with this scheme that causes a problem. And actually, it adds to the value.
Okay. Councillor Jenkins.
Yes, so this is just, you mentioned about having improving the carbon footprint. And I just wondered whether the intention would be to include air sourced or ground source heating in the property.
I'm not aware that's been considered at the moment. I think really it's a case of this property's been bought in a rundown condition, as I think you can see on the photographs and the officer's report and presentation. That it is going to be fully refurbed, so there will be new windows, etc., and a whole upgrading of the energy consumption and sustainability of the property.
Thank you. Can officers just put that drawing back up, please? I think from the objectors' concerns, if you look at the proposed rear elevation that you've given us, this one here, it does show that the ground is flat, but we've also heard from officers that the ground isn't actually flat. It's on a bit of a hill. So I can see why objectors are a little bit concerned, because you've given a dimension there, but it might be completely different at the other end. So I mentioned that it might be useful to have a dimension from the gutter line down to the flat roof. And that might not be normal, but how can we alleviate this concern that it might end up being taller than anticipated, depending on which end you actually make that final measurement.
I haven't seen it. So the late comments that the officer referred to, I haven't actually had sight of that information. So I don't know if there is a comment on that from the officer. We are happy to accept a pre-commencement condition for any finished floor levels to be agreed with the council to ensure that there's no issue and it's not perceived. I think, you know, as has been set out, the difference in floor levels is quite small, and because of the existing outbuilding that's there that this extension will replace, you can see at what point that change in floor levels is, looking at it on site at the moment. So you can take the measurements, I think, and see that quite clearly on site.
I think if you can discuss with officers and get some clarity as to where those measurements are made from, I think that would help.
I think if there was no existing outbuilding there, I could understand the point that it's more difficult to see what that difference is. But I think the fact that there's an existing building there that will be replaced, you can see what that floor level is.
As long as it's clear that
Steve,
that's
you want to come
maintained.
in here?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to further clarify in terms of the land level, so this is a neighbouring property again, and in terms of land level differences, we take a proportionate approach within planning applications, and we only require plans showing the land level differences where we need that information to make a consideration, really. So the planning officer, the case officer for the application, and myself have been out and visited the sites. And from our considerations, it was considered that the impact of a proposed extension could be clearly considered, because the impact in land levels was minimal, really. It's not like the extension is going to have the impact of a 1.5 story or a 2 story because of that change in land levels. It's only a slightly increased impact upon a existing single story extension. And as I allayed to the fact in my presentation, is that the extension is only projecting 2 meters from that neighbouring window, whereas the usual allowance would be up to 3 meters there. So in terms of the overall impact, when we look at everything together in terms of the height, the projection, the land levels, we don't consider that extension would fall beyond the level of acceptability that would usually allow for a single story extension.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Collins, finished?
Yes, I think the applicant's intention is good, but I'm just trying to support the community who've got a concern. So if there is some clarity that we can put forward to limit the height of the building in some way, that's clear that it's not going to drift upwards. I appreciate that officers have got all they need, but I'm just trying to support the community in asking for a little bit more detail so that the community around that that property is confident as well. That's all.
Yeah, I think we'd be happy to put a condition on in that regard.
Councillor Campbell.
Can we just go back to that picture again? Right, can we just bottom this? If you notice, there are effectively 3 extensions here, aren't there? On the extreme left, there's a substantial single-story one. In the centre, the gap between the houses has been filled in at some point with a pitched roof extension, and then next to it is the applicant's site, which is the site. Effectively, are we saying that if you look at the roof line on the extension on the applicant's site and the roof line on the single-story extension, are we saying that that's effectively the height difference between the gardens to all intents and purposes? Because actually the applicant's extension is the same height as the infill extension on next door, isn't it? Looking at it. And the second thing, get them both in, are we actually saying that the new extension, I'll ask you this question, the new extension is in effect at the same height where it abuts the the original building as that one.
You would do, Steve?
Yeah, just picking up on your last point in terms of the height compared to the existing. So if you just have a good look at this picture now, and I'll just flash to the plans to show you. But if you look there, the ridge line of the existing outbuildings at the eaves level of the infill, and if I go along. So you can see the existing on the left-hand top left and the proposed on the top right. So there is an increase in height there. However, for the reasons that I've previously covered.
But no, is the increase in height at the front because it's a flat roof?
Yeah.
Or is there any, is it actually higher up the building at the back?
Yeah, it's slightly higher up the building.
Right. Okay. That's enough.
If you look there, it's only a very minor increase to what the existing ridge level would be on that single-story outbuilding. And in terms of your other point regarding the taking the line across to note the difference in the land levels, I think that's potentially a good way to see them. It could well be, however, that's more of an original outbuilding to the rear there, so that eaves level looks pretty small on this neighbouring property. They're pretty short. I still think the best image to see the is it stop Lewis? I think the best image to see the potential land levels is this one, because it shows the very modest step in the properties as you go down, and the guard, as opposed to it being a gradual slope, it's a step nature of the land.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does members have any question to the officers? Councillor Campbell.
Just one quick one for conservation. Are you happy with what they're proposing to do, or should I say, are you not unhappy?
Yeah, I find the extension to be acceptable. There's various ways of getting a sympathetic addition to a historic building in a historic context. So just because it's in a conservation area doesn't stop change. It controls it. It makes it good change, positive change. So you can go a traditional route, which would involve a pitched roof, but to get the angle of the pitch for the roof required, the height at the junction with the host building would have to be higher to get the right throw of the rain. So if we went for a pitched roof, it would actually be higher, more of an impact on the extension. So therefore, I don't have an issue with a flat roofed approach, which allows it to be subservient and sympathetic to the setting. We're controlling the material, so that's going to be a good match. I don't consider it harmful to the positive building.
Councillor Anderson.
Just a couple of questions. One is, did any of the 3 ward members make any written submissions? I can't see any specific emphasis to written submissions. I accept that at the time the application came forward, at least one of the councillors wasn't a councillor at the time. So I am aware of that particular circumstance. And the second one is, we heard what the objector said. Is there anything that you could say as to what you could do in terms of putting additional conditions on in order to meet some of their concerns and to give them the reassurance?
Just in terms of your first point, so the comments from Councillor Bentley, which are alluded to in the officer report, they'll have had to be put in writing for the panel request. So, but apart from that, we didn't receive any further ones. And the second point, I think we've agreed that it'd be useful to put a condition on regarding the levels, just to check that they're what we assume them to be.
Yeah, I heard what you said, but
Yeah.
it was the other points that he was raising as well, that the residents be raising significant concern.
Yeah,
And
so
all it says is under conditions, plans to be approved.
yeah,
Well, it's a catch-all phrase, all looking for more detail, that's.
yeah. So sorry, yes. So in terms of the conditions, we've got the two standard ones which we put on all applications, which is the 3-year time limit and the plans to be approved. And then in addition to that, we're going to put on a quite prescriptive condition regarding the materials to ensure that brick and the mortar match is a good match. And then, sorry, let me just check my notes. Yeah, and then the final condition regarding the levels to be confirmed, and that'll be a prior commencement one as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I personally don't like the windows that they're putting in on the first floor. From your photographs, it looks like they've already done it.
Could we have a
Excuse me.
look again? Let's have a look.
I would have thought that was quite important in a conservation area, to keep the window styles the same, so that all of the properties maintain the sash window design that we actually see in the photographs. And why have officers allowed those window designs to change quite significantly?
Could we have a look at the windows?
Yeah, can I have the presentation again, please, Lewis? So this is a photo that I took probably a week or two ago. So this is the terrace as it is now.
But when you look at the one that you said was an additional one, where it's got the blue door in the middle,
Yeah.
They've already changed the window.
Yes. So this neighbouring, this picture from the neighbouring property. Can we go back to that one, Lewis? So this was submitted by one of the neighbouring residents. I'm not sure when this one was taken. I assume this one was prior to when I went on site, given it was only 10 days ago or so.
But at the moment, if you look at the first floor window,
Yeah.
above the white lean-to extension, it's got the multi-pane window. But the one that you show in your photograph has got the traditional sash window.
Yeah, that is correct.
There. So which is it today? Is it the multi-pane window or is it the sash window?
It appears to be the sash window, because this photo was taken 10 days ago, but we can get clarity from that, and we can confirm the window details via condition.
If you could, because I prefer the sash window because it's consistent with the rest of the terrace.
Yeah.
But in their application, their proposed rear elevation shows the multi-pane window. Yes, I know, but we've got a conservation area, so we have to take.
Just a minute, Councillor Hamilton.
But what I'm saying is, it may just be my personal preference, but it might also be a consideration for a conservation area. I'd just like to know which way we're going.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Collins, but looking at the windows, you have to be walking and looking up really to notice the difference as such. And if it's what
Chair, would it be advisable to ask if the
Hello.
applicant can clarify the existing state of the windows? We believe it's the sash that Steve took the picture of 10 days ago rather than the previous submission by the objector.
Sorry? Sash. Is it going to stay sash, Helen? The brand new windows.
I approve of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll put a condition on in that regard, just for clarity.
But was there any complaint on the windows in the complaint section? I can't recall seeing any objection against that. Can you?
It could have been caught up in the wider fenestration thing.
Now, I'm
so-
just
so yeah, we
wondering
can
if it's
cover-
just
we can cover it
Councillor
off.
Collins' view or the resident that lives in the area. I can't recall seeing anyone commented on the windows. Are there any other questions to the officers? Councillor Jenkins.
Just to pursue the point I made earlier about, in the interest of conservation, is it possible to put in a possible condition that asks that air sourced or ground source heating be considered?
In terms of conditions we put on applications, they've got to meet the test for conditions, and something of this nature for a householder extension wouldn't be proportionate to the scale of development. So we'd struggle to do that unless there was the intention of the applicants to do that in the first instance.
Thank you. Does members of any other comment? No? Does any officers have anything to clarify at this point? No? Can I ask the planning officer to sum up? Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there's been a bit of a discussion around the detailing and the finished floor levels in particular regarding the application proposals. From what I've gleaned from the discussion, there is suggestion that we attach additional conditions relating to finished floor levels of the proposed extension, and also a condition regarding the retention of the existing style of windows at first floor level. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we'll ask members to go to a vote. As a motion. So second. So all those in favor? It's anonymous. So I won't say against or abstain. So it's anonymous. That's been carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8, and that's the date and time of the next meeting, which will be on the 23rd of September. I now says the meeting has concluded. Please have a safe journey home. Thank you.